1. Hello and welcome to another edition of Entheo Radio, where we talk about shamanism, psychedelics, and altered states for healing. This is your captain speaking. This is Captain Hugh T Alkemi, and I'm very excited to have a very special guest, Greg Lake. Say hello to everybody.
Hey, how everybody doing? Good to be here.
Hey, I'm excited that you're here. Let me read your bio for everyone who's new to you. Greg Lake, Esquire, is a trial and appellate attorney, author, and entrepreneur. Over the last several years, Greg has assisted over 40 entheogen-based religious groups enshrine their rights under the free exercise laws. Greg is the CEO of EntheoConnect and has written 3 books: Psychedelic in Mental Health series, Psilocybin, The Law of Entheogenic Churches in the United States, and The Law of Entheogenic Churches, Volume 2, The Definition of Religion under the First Amendment. In 2021, Greg assisted the founding of the Church of Psilomethoxin, where he holds the position of co-founder and lead oracle. Oh man, yeah. Tell me what a lead oracle does exactly, because that's an old term, isn't it?
Yeah, so in our organization, there really is no hierarchy per se. Like the lead oracle, which me, Ben, and Ian, and our other co-founder hold, is really just denoting our spiritual equity that we put into the organization. But again, it doesn't mean that we're smarter or better than anybody in our organization. Just denotes the amount of spiritual equity that we put in.
Excellent. So you don't have like prophetic visions. You probably do have prophetic visions, actually.
You know, like I told you before we started, I do a lot of the doctrinal writings, and I work with our lead pastor Chuck in drafting our messages. So yeah, I mean, I guess like on a theological basis, I kind of guide the church in that direction. But yeah, I mean, just kind of as I channel it and say, oh yeah, so I'm being called to discuss this or that. So yeah.
Right. So we just had your cohort, Ben, who you just mentioned on the show, one of the co-founders. And one of my favorite shows this year, actually probably the first show this year, 2023, to be released on Entheo Radio. And he talked about some really deep diving, and he's a veteran and he's really working with people, and I think he's saving lives. Tell us about how young Greg goes from whatever experiences he had growing up to deep diving into these altered states, these altered substances, and brought yourself all the way to this position of a leader in the entheogenic community.
It's been a pretty wild ride, but I'll try to break it down as best I could. So I grew up in Northeast Texas. I had a beautiful childhood as far as our family. We had a good family, but unfortunately, I ended up getting deeply involved with drugs. Pretty hardcore drugs from a very early age, which included some non-intentional psychedelic use, right? But mostly just like hard drugs, meth, crack, all that stuff. And I suffered through that for about 17 years. I was able to go through law school, go to college, get a law degree, get a law license, but not too long after that, it broke down and I ended up homeless for 2 years on the streets. And fortunately, through legal intervention, was guided to a treatment facility, which was inpatient 2.5 years, very tough program that I went through. And, through that program, I started to develop spiritually because of the circumstances were so rough that it necessitated spiritual progress and evolution to be able to survive that environment. And when I got out in 2018, I suffered a lot of anxiety because going from a very structured environment to you can do whatever you want is a lot. It's overwhelming for a lot of people coming out of various facilities, prisons, stuff like that. It's hard to explain, but it's like, these infinite possibilities of anything you can do now. And you just pray that you don't make a decision that leads you down the wrong path. And so yeah, upon I was dealing with those issues appropriately, but I was called through internet research I had previously worked with and propagated psilocybin mushrooms way back in 2010 and was working with them. I was having quasi mystical experiences back then, but I think my addiction to opiates and alcohol probably blunted it to have like a full blown experience. So I was again called to start working with them, and so I again, uh, you know, grew some of my own and started to consume them. And these experiences when I was sober were completely full blown mystical religious experiences every time. Just incredibly deep journeys. I was visited by several entities who gave me direction to write my first book on psilocybin. I was directed that if I write the book, my higher path will be revealed. So I ended up, writing my first book, June of 2020. I was consistently working with the medicine, during that time. And as soon as I published my first book, within a week, I was approached about helping people form psychedelic churches. So and it's one of those things that as soon as I cracked the law book on it, I still today am completely infatuated with the subject, with the work, with the people, with the communities. And so that's kind of how I segued. And at the time, I was doing trial and appellate law as a maritime attorney. And so after I published that first book and got into helping people with these churches, obviously, I then was able to go to all types of different sacrament ceremonies and work with various, sacred substances, and got a kind of a rundown purview of most of the space. And so through that, I ended up publishing my second book. That was in February 2021. February 2021. Published my second book, which is a breakdown of the general law in the area of entheogenic churches in the United States. Continued my work with that, and then published my third book on the definition of religion under the First Amendment in, I think, February 2022. And it's especially this question of what constitutes a religion under the First Amendment and our law, and then academically, what academics say about it has completely infatuated me, and has really directed a lot of my studies since then. And then fast forward to November 2021, psilomethoxin was discovered by my partner Ian. And immediately after, we formed the Church of Psilomethoxin. And we took about 9 months to share the sacrament within our own personal circles, really just to collect safety data was the most important. That before we open up the doors of this church, let's make sure that this sacrament can be responsibly used and generally safe. And so after about 500 dispensing, doses, we determined that we felt comfortable enough with, open this up to, I say, the general public. We do have an application process, and we want to make sure that people are spiritually aligned with the ritualistic use of entheogens. And generally, if they are and everything looks okay, we will accept people as members. And so we went public with the church September 2022, and since then we've just been growing exponentially. And it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun. I'm putting all the knowledge and guidance I gave over the years into use, and it's been an incredible learning experience. And I'm able to better craft the way that I guide people through personal experience working my own church. Yeah, it's been a blessing.
Thank you, Greg. Yeah. I was so excited. I actually joined the first month that the church opened up. Like, I'm doing the app, and my roommate did the app, and we got real excited. We told a few people about it.
Yeah.
But of the people in the Phoenix area, me and my roommate are the only two that I know went through that process and actually received sacrament. So I'm excited about that.
Yeah. And I'll say this: we're working towards publishing a Discord server on our back end for members, where we will make different regional sub chats, right, where people at different regions can link up with each other, hold space, whatever they want to do. But so that way, you can have also that personal link with other members, which is very important as well.
Yeah, I was alerted by Tom Lane. Tom Lane?
I know Tom Lane Tom Lane for me is one of my elders. And his very deep knowledge, specifically regarding the sacred mushrooms and stuff. Yeah, and we've sat in ceremony with Tom. He's an elder in our community.
Yeah, a lot of respect for Tom. He's been on the show, I think, twice, maybe only once. I think he's been on the show once. And I've been chatting with him, and he's like, "Oh yeah, talk to Greg, get him on the show." And I'm like, "Okay, all right, I'll be bold, you know."
Yeah, he's an advocate of mine and mine of his, also of me. And he held a sacred mushroom summit maybe about a year ago that I spoke at, and everybody just really enjoyed the talk. And so since then, me and Tom have been really tight. It's a blessing to know him.
It'll be interesting to see if his interview follows this one, or if Ian maybe jumps on with us.
Yeah, I think Ian most definitely is willing to jump on. Uh, no problem.
He looks like such a character. I saw his bio photo, and he's got like this set of symbols on his
Yeah.
wrists.
Uh-huh.
He's,
Yeah.
and I've been in the meetings, Sunday service and integration meetings, and he's
Yeah.
just very unique, almost mad scientist unique.
So Ian has been working spiritually, religiously with entheogens, particularly 5-MeO, for over 20 years. And through his work and his practice, he has developed some of the most deepest spiritual knowledge that I've ever come across. And he's a expert at the Quran, the Bible. And so like his ability to draw on all these sources and come up with these universal truths that are also relayed through working with the medicine, it's incredibly enlightening. And I definitely look up to him spiritually because he has acquired a lot of knowledge that I desire to have.
He seems like a deep guy. I'm excited about him.
He
Asking
is,
him
man.
questions.
And worked with a lot of veterans. Most of his medicine practice has been veteran oriented, and all his advocacy in the space has been mostly veteran oriented. And same with Ben, in a large degree, me too. I've helped several veteran specific organizations develop their legality behind serving plant medicines, and I usually do that free or of little charge through my work. So that's how we all kind of coalesce together initially around that that main thing about helping veterans. But obviously, as you can see, it's developed much further from that. But that's still one of our main focuses, though.
Nice.
Mm-hmm.
So, what's the deal with you being an attorney? I know that's sort of downplayed in your bio a little bit, but you're like legit an attorney. You represent, you go to court, you do things.
Yeah, so I did for a very long time. Obviously, doing my consulting work with the churches hasn't necessitated any court appearances as of yet. But yeah, I was a trial and appellate lawyer before I ended up going to rehab and stuff. I mean, I did a lot of court back then. I'm licensed in both Texas and Louisiana. And then whenever I was doing my maritime work, necessitated a bunch of court appearances and filings and all that stuff. So I do like going to court and being a real lawyer and everything. But I guess my biggest passion has been helping people navigate the law as it relates to holding sacred space in this country. So one day will I end up back in court? Possibly, but where I'm at now, it's just I feel like I'm benefiting the most people doing this work, and that's really what matters to me.
Absolutely. So, Greg, stupid question from probably everybody. I'm going to ask it. Like, why do psilocybin? What's the benefits of it? In your own words, and then why do psilomethoxin? What's the benefits there? And follow up to that, is it really safe and legal?
Yeah, so I'll explain all that in detail. So yeah, psilocybin, absolutely. I mean, I first developed my first intimate relationship with psilocybin, and I still carry that to today. I mean, the we can really talk about the science here. What does the science say? Well, the science says that pretty reliably, 70 to 80% of the time that people take a macrodose in a good set and setting where they feel comfortable, they're going to have a mystical religious experience. And moreover, it's been shown that as far as clinical results, the nature of that experience really determines long-term positive outcomes as far as clinically speaking, right? And moreover, we can say it right now, psilocybin is safe, right? There's not one direct death that anybody can point to in at least over 10,000 years of recorded use directly and solely attributed to psilocybin, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, I mean, it's fun. Now, granted, I think people need to understand the importance of what I'm going to say ritual or ceremony, but really overarching, that means set and setting, right? That we develop a proper set and setting. If people are going to go deep macrodose, it's always 100% suggested to have someone there, preferably someone experienced, to make sure everything goes all right. But I mean, I know, and I've personally done extremely deep dives on my own. I mean, I'm not saying that's completely unsafe, but just to make people aware that, there could be risk involved if something, goes wrong during the journey. Not everybody's able to handle it efficiently. So just keep that in mind. Psilomethoxin. Yeah. So psilomethoxin mostly acts on the H2A1 receptor site, which is what 5-MeO targets, right? Whereas psilocybin, LSD, a lot of these other tryptamines target the A2. And so the A2 is mostly the visionary one, right? It's what helps produce all these great visions, you know what I mean? Wild visions. And a lot of people get a lot of information from those visions, right? Not to say that that's bad at all. That's great. That has its place. It is extremely sacred in and of itself. But psilomethoxin is an A1 agonist. So, that really, to me, is the switch in your brain that opens you up to perceive source energy. Obviously, when you do a deep dive on 5-MeO, you get completely immersed in the source energy. But with the psilomethoxin, it's much, much, much milder than inhaling 5-MeO. And so, yeah, it's a more gentle, I say it's like a gentle reminder of that beautiful, unconditional, loving source energy pumping through your body. And it really takes people out of, I know for me, it removes me to an acceptable degree from my thoughts, feelings, and emotions, to where I'm not just purely reactionary. Do I still react? Yes, but it puts me into this I am phase, like this third person observer, my higher self, I guess you could say, that is able to filter between input and response, right? So it makes me acutely able to guide my mental energy, to guide my emotional energy, in very beneficial ways. And you end up realizing that, man, my reactions to things were really knocking me off center every day. And so now this psilomethoxin helps, really center you. And I do believe that in the aggregate, after you've, because we determine our outside reality, right? So as you're making these more sound, moves and decisions relating to the energy that you put out into the universe, I believe, and in my life, it's shown, like in the aggregate, creates a better quality of life. Is psilomethoxin safe? I mean, I certainly believe so. To date, we've dispensed probably close to 100,000 microdoses without one incident or negative report, that came back. I mean, some people describe that they have a little bit of stomach uncomfort with it. That's probably the only kind of like somewhat negative effect that people have, but it's not like debilitating where they're like, oh, I can never do this again, right? And people try different things to get around it. But yeah, is it legal? So obviously it's 4-hydroxylated 5-MeO DMT, okay, which is not a specifically scheduled substance. Now, there is the Analog Act, right? Well, what does the Analog Act say? It says, well, the subject molecule has to be structurally similar to an already scheduled substance. So, for this analysis, we'll just say, for argument's sake, this is close enough to 5-MeO DMT. Now, I will tell you, in the courts, and just so you know, there has been some successful cases where the Analog Act was deemed unconstitutional for lack of notice, because particularly with the structural similarity, the decisions are all over the board. There is no real standard to determining that. And there have been people who went forward with producing these analogs, creating companies based upon expert testimony from an expert, right? Where they said, yeah, to me, this wouldn't qualify as being structurally similar. But then they go to court, and sure enough, despite the expert testimony, the court still finds it structurally similar. So I say that to say this is that for this, for our purposes here, we'll say, yeah, it's structurally similar. But the other part of that equation is that the substance also has to have the same or substantially similar hallucinogenic effects. And I hate that word hallucinogenic, because I think it's a gross misrepresentation of the true nature of these experiences. But, so basically here it would be, does Psilomethoxin have the same or substantially similar hallucinogenic effects to 5-MeO? And our answer to that is no. And our argument there would be, one, the effects of psilomethoxin are not hallucinogenic in nature, and neither is 5-MeO, really. Because one thing about the psilomethoxin, I mean, at higher doses, people do get some visuals, but it's mostly like looking at something and it having like a halo around it, right? Nothing really distorted perceptory wise, just everything has this divine glow to it. So, with that being said, it's not hallucinogenic, one, and for all intents and purposes, what we've seen is that it is nowhere near the effects, severity of effects, not to mean that in a bad way, of 5-MeO. That's usually inhaled and quick, rapid onset, plunge way to the top in a quick come down. Psilomethoxin has a much gentler curve that doesn't get anywhere towards the peak of a 5-MeO experience, right? And just so you know, we actually had a meeting today. We have a research team put together who's going to publish an app through our membership to start doing research, along those lines about safety, subjective effects, and then also with some mental health measures. So, our plan is to gather the data. One thing we have to know is that psilomethoxin, the government has zero data on it, animal or human studies or otherwise, right? So
right.
I think a lot of people miss this point is that, to show up in court or administrative hearing to make a case, you got to have some evidence, right? Or else you can actually get censured for that. So right now there is zero evidence that the government could bring up against us as far as the effects or it being a fit under the Analog Act, right? So, we're committed to gathering that data. Again, we're not trying to skew the data. It's going to come out the way that it's going to come out, but we feel very confident that it's going to show exactly what I just said, regarding the Analog Act and stuff. And then, obviously too, we have our church. And so we're also quasi operating under a religious exemption, not that we necessarily need it because this is specifically scheduled, but just establishing, because like I say, Ian, Ben, and I, that's the only way we've ever approached these substances is in a very spiritual, religious manner. So that's why we filed the church first thing. Within a week of discovery, we filed the church because that's what we do. That's in line with our existing beliefs and practices. And we feel it's in line with a lot of other people's beliefs and practices. But, with that being said, theoretically, right now, considering the Analog Act, and one other point I'd like to make is that probably about 5-6 months ago, the DEA backed off emergency scheduling several different tryptamines, 3 of which are arguably substantially similar to 5-MeO. So that was also kind of, and we consider it a divine sign, right? This was a divine timing sequence thing to kind of tell us like, okay, it's time to pull the trigger with the psilomethoxin. But, with that data, we could say that really we could legally just dispense this outside of a church. But we do the church because it's really in line with what we're doing. And, ultimately it does provide an extra layer of protection for us and our members. We don't think we'll ever need to fall back on that. But it does help on the protection end. But most importantly, I think the church is good to provide a container for people to work with this sacrament in the context of a community of aligned people. As far as spiritually progressing, we think that is the optimum scenario for people to work with our sacrament, evolve, and carry out that good energy into the world.
Excellent. Exciting. So I've got like a few different directions to go. I want to acknowledge I want to acknowledge your cat for dropping in. Shout out to the cat.
Yeah, she loves me. She likes to get all my business.
So let's go with what you're describing, the legality thing, because I think that's really at the heart of a lot of people's hesitation, not wanting to try either psilocybin or a mushroom-based compound like psilomethoxin, or even DMT, which in a lot of settings, and especially specifically the one that you're describing, the church setting, people should be allowed to have mystical experiences, regardless of if their sacrament is hallucinogenic, entheogenic, or psychedelic. People should be allowed to have a bona fide mystical experience. And we've seen this with the precedent of the peyote church and stuff like that. And I think there's even here in Arizona, not just the peyote church, but there's a DMT church, right?
Yeah,
They
there's
have
actually yeah, there's a church. There's actually two churches in Arizona, two ayahuasca churches who are right now in active litigation at the district court there. One would be the Yahe Assembly in Church of Divine Light, and then also Church of the Eagle and the Condor currently are both in active litigation against the federal government in federal court there. And I expect both of them to get favorable decisions based upon um, the UDV case, which was 2006, where the Supreme Court approved that the UDV was exempt under the Controlled Substances Act and could proceed with consuming ayahuasca as part of their practice. And then in 2009, Santo Daime received a favorable opinion in the Oregon District Court, allowing them as well to proceed with their religious, ayahuasca religious practice. And so there's existing Supreme Court precedent, right? On point with regarding to, using entheogens as part of the religious practice. And, in those cases, the court gave us a clear outline of their inquiry, right? It's, are you sincere? Is this a religion? Is there any safety concern? And so the safeties, the government has to show a compelling governmental interest, right? So what does that mean? It shows that they have to show that there's a severe or extreme health risk to the members of the congregation, right? And we know that with doing proper screening and having some safety protocols and stuff, I mean, you can virtually eliminate most of the potential risk involved with consuming these sacraments, right? And then the last inquiry is what we call diversion, and what the government will claim they have an interest in preventing diversion from religious to non-religious use, meaning that if sacraments taken or distributed outside of the religious context, well, then they have an interest in preventing that. So, again, just creating good sound protocols for storing, handling, and tracking or accounting the sacrament should relieve most, if not all, concerns that a court would ever have, right? Per the Santo Daime and UDV cases, looking at the court's analysis there and what expert testimony was offered and all that. So yeah, I mean, now some of the other lawyers in the space have a very restrictive view of what qualifies as a religious practice under the First Amendment, but I will let you know, and this is not coming from a bad place, but I've done a ton more research than they have on this question, right? And as a matter of fact, my whole third book is about 300 pages specifically aimed at that. And yeah, it's much more broader than, I can boil it down to this. As a matter of fact, the courts have even said this roundabout about entheogenic religions. And it's this, it's, this group of practitioners, or me, a solo practitioner, hold these certain compounds to be sacred, that we believe that if we come together or we practice with these sacraments in a certain circumscribed way, that they can elucidate fairly reliably mystical religious experiences, in that within these experiences is where we get all of our guidance in life, right? It's no different than people consulting a holy book, which is normally a collection of primary religious mystical experiences, right? And it's usually some intermediary party relating that to your life. So this is what happened when Isaiah saw the burning bush 2,000 years ago. Here's what it means for your life today. So, in the context of these religions, there's no book necessarily. There might be writings and stuff like that, like we have at our church, but really it's in the substance of the experiences where people receive this guidance. And, we all know that these experiences are very personal and specifically aimed at people, right? So, we all sit in the ceremony same night. What I might take out of my experience might be completely different than what you take out of yours. There might be some overlap. And that's why integration is so important, because much like where the preacher or the pastor or rabbi is going to tell you about this holy book, how it applies to your life, in integration, we're working within a group and with the provider to help us make sense of these experiences and then apply what's being conveyed to our lives. So, I tell people on a very fundamental level, these are no different than every other established religion, just with the main difference being we don't rely on secondary religious phenomena and writings and preachers, stuff like that. We rely on the primary, right? The actual direct connection with the divine. It's where we get our direction and guidance. And again, that's different for everybody who approaches it. But, our commonality is that we agree to come as a group share these experiences and share in the integration of working this out in our lives. It's really what it boils down to. Like, if that is really describes what the practice at issue is, I firmly believe that that's a religious practice, right? And the good thing about this space is that the research proves that people are having mystical religious experiences, and it also shows that the better the nature of that experience, the more that they're able to improve their quality of life. So it's not us just telling this; it's verified in the scientific data in the research.
So, can a Christian join your Church of Psilomethoxin, and
Yeah.
why would they want to?
Well, because we're non-dogmatic. We don't tell people what they have to believe necessarily. We one thing we do advocate is like I said, our I am nature, like accessing divinity from within. So I mean, as long as they're comfortable with that precept, absolutely. And our pastor Chuck Crisco is a former Christian pastor, and so he understands a lot about how to relate to people that anything you believe is not wrong. You know what I mean? And you are very well accepted here. And so, yeah, I think an ex-Christian would, or a Christian, current Christian would do very well in our church. We're not, again, we're not telling them any specifics necessary about what to believe or not to believe, other than working with the sacrament, working with our integration and stuff like that can move you along spiritually, regardless of what your background or your current, choice of religion is.
What about an atheist? Would they pass your application there?
Well, that's a very good question. I mean, as long as they're open to accepting that you can have spiritual, potentially religious experiences working with these sacraments, yeah, and again, it doesn't have to be of any form. I mean, I'm sure that even an atheist could have some type of experience, connecting them into universal consciousness or something like that. That could be very spiritual, religious in nature, although it's not, doctrinal, hardcore, these sets of beliefs, but just a general, connecting this to everything is a very spiritual, religious experience in nature.
Yeah, I've been communing with some humanists, and some people in those groups are very atheistic, and we're doing a form of group therapy that is like AA or NA without the Christian aspects of those groups, and they're called smart recovery groups, and I applaud them for making it more accessible to people and less dogmatic.
Yes.
I think that about 70% of the people that attend that group are open to psilocybin-like experiences or plant experiences. Except they're probably having more of their mystical experience in a sort of self-centered, self-focused way, rather than in a sort of pyramid-like structure. Oh God, you're above me. Oh God, you're within me. And then it kind of speaks directly to the way we use entheogen over psychedelic when we conversationally speak about these substances.
I do. I'm a big advocate of entheogen over psychedelic, but and nothing wrong with the word psychedelic, but with my use, it's definitely entheogen, right? Because I'm seeking my inner divinity and connecting with the divine. And and I think for a lot of people, moving from Christianity or some doctrine where it's like this other being outside of you as the ultimate divine, to moving the divine resides within me and I'm a divine manifestation of the ultimate creator. I think that's very empowering for people to say, I don't need to look out of myself or what others say or anything like that to have access to this deep knowledge and wisdom. That's what we plan to do. We, like I said, the first, like me being lead oracle doesn't denote anything about me being better than anybody on really any level, because we want to empower our members to look inside themselves for those ultimate answers that they seek.
All right. Oracular vision. So speak to the oracleism, the oracular vision that you have. What's coming for the Church of Psilomethoxin on psilomethoxin.com? What's next?
Yeah, so we're publishing a new web platform this week, so that's kind of immediate. We're doing a lot of events, going and showing up at different psychedelic conferences and stuff like that. But we plan that the membership is going to grow exponentially over time. It already has been, and with that, do further organizing. We're going to have a ceremony facilitator program where people can apply and get approved to hold ceremony with the sacrament. And then, helping people connect regionally, to have groups and stuff like that, and do fellowship events, stuff like that. And we're moving globally. So we've got people from all over the world who have joined, many of them very interested in starting chapters in their countries. And so we certainly plan to work with those people to make that a reality and just make this a global thing, part of it is somewhat shifting the paradigm of religion a little bit too, because I'll say that one of our beliefs is that, really science and medicine and nature, spirit, and faith belong together in a certain extent, right? I was conveyed in an ayahuasca experience one time that the reason why humans are in such a pickle with each other and with nature is that way back when, and I think St. Thomas Aquinas was the one that really started this shift of separating the study of science and medicine from nature, spirit, and faith, right? Whereas back in even more ancient times, all those were blended together, right? And it was all seen as like one whole paradigm. And it was relayed to me that particularly with nature, when humans started looking to man and science to heal them and for their divination, it redefined our relationship with nature, where nature was no longer as sacred, and us as much of a part of it as before. And so that really got the tide turning, where we did some harm to Mother Nature. So with that, whenever I first had the chance to partake in Psilomethoxin, it was relayed to me that this is really a physical manifestation of that reunion, because the synthetic 5-MeO, which is made in a lab by a chemist, is mixed with the sacred mushroom substrates, which represents nature and spirit and the divine, to make this physical manifestation of that reunion. And so on a doctrinal level, that's what we believe. And, to that end, we're going to be implementing research platforms and working with scientists and doctors and stuff like that to conduct their studies. And just trying to, and I think psychedelics is the perfect place for this to occur, right? Because, even the researchers realize, oh, these people are having religious experiences. It has an effect on, their outcomes and stuff. And so I think it's just a great way to kind of bring those camps back together to a certain extent, and really reconnect people back with nature.
Hallelujah.
Hallelujah. Yeah.
So I got a couple avenues of questioning that occurred to me while you were sharing that. One is because you're so well spoken, and that's probably because of the attorney background and so much brain development that goes along with psilocybin.
Yeah.
I can try to punch a hole in one of your arguments, or I can ask you to elaborate on microdosing and what its uses are for people.
Either or, whatever you feel is best for your show. Yeah, it's good.
Let's punch a hole in things, because I'm a bit of a stubborn guy.
Yeah.
Comes with being a Leo and an Aquarius.
Yeah.
So you described it very succinctly, very quickly, and I don't know the whole process. And as somebody who has broken through in my own ways and been considered at different points, most of which were points in discretion, manufacturing in the past a controlled substance such as psilocybin by growing mushrooms. How is it that your whole process, start to finish, because you got a thing like DMT that you're feeding to a thing like psilocybin mushrooms, is sanctified and on the legal side of the law?
Oh yeah, so we do all our production in Canada and Mexico, where 5-MeO is not scheduled. Obviously, there's a little bit, in Canada, theoretically, psilocybin's still way low on their scheduled list. But what we've seen is that Canadian authorities particularly aren't hot to trot to bust anybody with psilocybin. And moreover, once the 5-MeO is introduced, it never produces a psilocybin in the mushroom, right? So it's like the mushroom actually contains only a non-scheduled substance. And so, but initially we do all of our 5-MeO production and introduction to the mushrooms and growing in both. We have both setups in Mexico and Canada. So that's how we've kind of skirted that. So that way, when the dried mushroom fruiting bodies come back into the United States, it's a non-scheduled,
Wow.
substance.
That was a surprising and wonderfully refreshing.
Yeah. Yeah, we took, we carefully took our time. We personally put in a lot of financial resources to make this happen.
Yeah.
And, we just planned from day one to make it the most legal, efficient, process possible. And we were blessed by, knowing people who were actively producing psilocybin in those areas to quantity, who were, more than willing to jump in and work on this project with us. We're very grateful for that.
Wow, that is wonderful. And you must have thought tanked that, because I didn't think that through.
Yeah.
All the way. I was like, wow, I hope I don't.
Yeah.
I hope I don't expose him for doing anything illegal. This is great.
No, that's a very good question. And I know a lot of people wonder about that, but we as lawyers, Ian and I keep abreast of most of the controlled substances laws, especially in Mexico and Canada, because particularly Mexico, a lot of people go down there for retreats and stuff. And Ian had hosted a lot of retreats and became friends with a lot of people inside the medicine space in Mexico. And so we just we immediately worked to apply those contacts. And luckily we're able to get several people on board.
You remind me to ask some very alchemical questions to Ian when he comes on the show, because
he'll know him. He's more of our, even though he's the longest spiritual religious practitioner, he's really in this project really devoted to the science and the mechanics of everything. Yeah. And so he can go very in depth about that. Exciting.
Okay, so tackle that microdosing topic. Everyone's like always asking me, because I microdose. I'm pretty active about it and well spoken about it. They always want to know, like, what's the benefits? And there's like sort of a questionable spectrum of benefits, and it's different for everybody. But maybe you can talk about your personal experiences and then the general stuff. Yeah, so I'll say this. Prior to working with Psilomethoxin, I wasn't a big microdose guy. I was always deep dive or put it down type mentality, but the Psilomethoxin, it for me, my microdose is generally 300 milligrams after breakfast. The good thing about it is that it doesn't have a tolerance curve. So you can literally take this every day with substantially similar effects. So I usually go a week or two on every day, and then I take probably a week off and then come back on. But, for me, it's just, I can feel an immediate energetic shift in my body as soon as it hits me. Like I feel just, it takes a lot of my thinking from my brain to my heart. Okay. And I noticed that pretty much immediately when it comes on. And like I said, even at the microdose, I'm completely, as a matter of fact, I'm extra functional on a microdose. My focus is unbelievable. Like I said, it gives me almost complete control of my mental energy, and it eliminates my ruminating or intrusive thoughts. I'm able to discern a lot better what is in alignment for me at any given time, and I'm more easily to avoid that, which is not. But yeah, it puts me in this third-party IM mode where it's like, incoming sensory data. No, this isn't really in alignment with where I'm at today. So I'm just going to avoid this, or put this to the side. And so it helps me in that regard, because normally I'm all over the place, and like people message me while I'm trying to do something, then I'll get off on a tangent, then try to come back to what I'm doing. And, I suffer from a lot of ADD, and still do, but the Psilomethoxin definitely helps on that. And another thing is that physical performance enhancement. So I work out pretty regularly, and, working with Psilomethoxin, it just puts you into a mind muscle connection like none other. Yeah. And even my trainer has commented on it. And so, yeah, and we have some preliminary data. There's a guy in Austin that's a member of ours that works with special operators, Navy SEALs and stuff, helping them optimize. And he does electrical readings throughout the body during certain activities, doing certain things. And so he's hooked people up after microdosing Psilomethoxin, and it's his belief that it actually increases the body's energy output by about 30%. Oh, wow. And
Yeah, and I can tell you just from other anecdotal reports and my own reports, I do believe that to be true. Do I know it's exactly 30%? No, not necessarily, but I do believe that it does cause an increase in energetic output in the body. And, it just puts me in my heart center. I tell people this all the time. It's like, gratitude. A lot of times we'll receive a lot of blessings in life to be grateful for, but it's not till like a later time that we kind of sit back and say, oh, I'm so grateful for this. But psilomethoxin gives me that little pause where as soon as something is received, I'm able to recognize immediately what a blessing that is. And it allows me to express that on site, and just let people know or whatever know how grateful I am for that. And yeah, and with that too, psilomethoxin allows me to achieve and prolong states of gratitude where I can almost bring myself to tears sometimes with it, just in gratitude. It's just a very heart-centered thing, which is just a joy and a privilege. I mean, I can only imagine that holding states of gratitude for 5+ minutes are probably pretty good for your health, mental and physical, right? So,
Yeah. Oh, yeah. What's the word? It creates coherency within the body. Coherence.
Yeah, mind-heart coherence is one of
Yeah.
the things that a lot of ancient people, strove for. Yeah.
So tell us real quick, and I've heard this mostly from Paul Stamets, but I think there are a few people also toting this information. Are you privy to it's a frontal cortex activation with psilocybin, maybe psilomethoxin, that causes people to be a little bit more humanistic in their thinking and their problem solving and less violent?
I would imagine so. I mean, again, and I think I can revert back to my comments about it making you heart-centered. I think when we're thinking and acting from our heart, those naturally come in line with what you described. Yeah, I would say so.
And then generally speaking, psilocybin versus psilomethoxin, because of the not tolerance sort of effect on psilomethoxin, it may be more effective as a microdose.
It really is. Yeah. So it's like, obviously with the microdose, you want to get to kind of subperceptual ranges. With psilomethoxin, even when you get into the perceptual a bit, it's very manageable and actually beneficial, and it really, you sense it as energetic. It's like you just feel this amazing energy going through your body. And so it doesn't really get you into this like heavy kind of psilocybin type experience. It's very light. And many people find it functional. So yeah, I mean, I think on the microdose level, it probably is a little bit more beneficial than psilocybin. That's not to downplay psilocybin microdosing at all. I mean, obviously, a bunch of people have, I've always respected it because people get results, and if it's helping people, I'm for it, and so, yeah, I mean, again, that's not to say anything bad about psilocybin microdosing, but obviously my opinion is that psilomethoxin could be slightly more beneficial for a number of different reasons.
Greg, you're an amazing guy, and you've got a great team, and you're so well spoken. Do you guys have a plan? You're talking about going to conferences. Do you have a plan to do retreats? Do you have a plan to do events that are bigger? I noticed that you had one kickoff party in Texas, but let's speak to like community development very specifically. So how can people get involved beyond joining?
Yeah, so community development, very important for us. Again, we've kind of been working to structure our web platform to be able to do that more efficiently and effectively, which we will be publishing this week. And yeah, through that, again, we want to connect individuals in different regions. And, as far as we're concerned, like, whatever events they want to hold, as long as everybody's being safe and not doing anything stupid, we give people free flow to however they want to meet and commune together, or whatever that looks like. And then through our ceremony facilitator program, we hope that'll also be a conductor for producing communities as well. And moreover, for new people who don't really know whether they want to join the church yet or never worked with psilomethoxin, that'll give them an opportunity to go with an experienced practitioner and experience the sacrament and kind of make up their mind through that. But yeah, and I think you mentioned we have we're co-sponsoring an entheogenic church convention in Austin in late April, which will be a lot of panels and speakers on the entheogenic church topics. We'll have some musical guests. We're actually going to do a Psilomethoxin ecstatic dance at that event. We have live musical artists coming. But yeah, we're definitely going to be, we're based out of Austin. So obviously a lot of the events we've thrown so far, we'll be throwing her in Austin, but we plan to also sponsor, events all over.
Well, I'm excited about that. Keep me in mind. Keep Entheo Radio in mind.
Yeah, I will. Yeah. I mean, we'd love to have you come to the Entheogenic Church Convention if you want to come.
That would be great. And so I have a couple asks, and they are mostly off-camera asks, but I'm so excited. I'm going to share my asks.
Yeah.
I do want to be part of this this facilitator program. I've been a shamanic minister. I've been a minister, reverend, whatever, for 13 years.
Okay.
And it's exciting to me to have the backing of the church and community and be more than just myself doing the work spiritually for people. And I noticed like one of the biggest things that you guys have is that community there, and it's mostly online right now. And it was, I hands down attended a couple weeks ago, or 3 weeks ago, or something like that, right before the turn of the year, the very last Sunday service, and best integration group. And I mean, I enjoyed the service too, but the integration group was really neat. And I have to say, like, if anyone's listening who is considering joining, even if you don't get the sacrament, going to their services, Greg's services, Chuck, pastor, really great. And you can, I would say they could probably, take sacrament in their own hands and in their own ways and attend, with or without taking whatever.
Yeah. We are accepting of all entheogenic experiences, right? So, if you used sacred entheogen in an intentional way, and had some, insights or have something that you want to bring to the group, even if you haven't, worked specifically with Psilomethoxin, we absolutely welcome it. Because another thing about integration is that in a group, you might have some revelation or vision or had some download that, someone else might hear that, and that might help them make sense of theirs, or vice versa by comparison, right? And so, yeah, we think it's all beneficial for all entheogenic experiences to come to our groups, and we honor all the sacred entheogens. And yeah, so that would be great. And I appreciate the words.
Who was the woman running? Who was the woman running it? I want to acknowledge her.
Oh yeah, Hope Latimer. Yeah, she's incredible, man. We
Yeah.
For us on a doctrinal level, while we do believe consuming the sacrament is really the primary kind of catalyst for spiritual change and evolution, integration is right up there with it, right? Because that's where we really, I would say, the rubber meets the road, in that, we can learn all these great things in these experiences, but really it's making that make sense to your life is really where the traction starts to catch. And so we take it very seriously, and we're going to be, evolving the program over time, having more integration offerings. And we hope through that will help also build community too.
Yeah. And keep Arizona in mind, because we do have some precedents, and I would love to unify what's going on over there in Texas. Now, you're not based in Texas. Your home is not in Texas anymore.
I'm living in Florida now. But I'm from Texas. I'm licensed in Texas. Obviously, Ian and them are in Austin, which has been the base for our law firm and now this church. But yeah, and I'll say this, I just want to let everybody know, it's like, if any of our members ever catch any flack for their use or possession of Psilomethoxin, like, the church will stand up for them. You know what I mean? We would never leave a member just hanging out there by themselves, because obviously our interests are aligned. So, like, I don't know, if someone's in Maine and, we were able to go and successfully win a good case there, that's obviously good for the church, and, sticking up for the members, obviously the very right thing to do. And we're committed to that. So I'll just let people know we obviously think it's perfectly legal. Now, sometimes the law might not necessarily see it that way initially, unfortunately, but that's why we're preparing ahead of time, gathering our data, getting all of our ducks in a row to be the 100% the most prepared to stand up and defend anyone in court that we need to.
Beautiful. What's your opinion on that? There's like a Four Corners church, a Native American church that anyone can join and get a card. I think it might even be based in Utah. Have you heard of that one?
The Okaluva Native American
Yeah,
Church. Yeah,
I
I'm very
can't pronounce the
familiar with
name.
them.
Okaluva. Okay,
Yeah, and they've received a favorable opinion.
cool.
Um, in New Hampshire, one of their people got caught up
Huh.
with some of the psilocybin supplied from them, and was able to win at the Supreme Court level. Supreme Court said that, you know, our analysis requires that the government show a compelling interest. And as we're all aware, like with psilocybin, it's going to be a tough case, right? Because the safety's been proven up. This guy had his sacrament locked in a safe, so really no diversion issue there. And yeah, and they noted that he was part of this church, and so him being a sincere religious practitioner was noted as a member of the church, and yeah, and got a successful win at the Supreme Court level. So that's just kind of an example of what an established church, highly organized and stuff can really help with these legal cases.
Nice. And then, do you have any opinions on again, Utah-based? I think it's called the Assembly of God. They were just featured in Rolling Stone for
Oh
doing.
yeah, that is yeah, that is Steve Urquhart's church, who I know very well. Is actually an ex-state legislature. And yeah, I mean, yeah, when he brought his church out, he went and told all the high up state officials, local police, all that stuff. He just let them know what he was doing. So they're very well aware of his church. But again, I think a lot of people have the wrong impression is that I think for the most part, the government isn't highly interested in intruding upon peaceful, safe, religious practitioners, no matter really what they're doing. And I mean, obviously we look to the UDV in Santo Daime, and the government conducted raids at those different churches, but no one was arrested. No one got arrested. They seized the sacrament, and that's been pretty much the modus operandi from especially the federal government in the past. It's not been to prosecute any individuals, part of the church or anything, but just to seize the sacrament and then wait to see what they're going to do. And unfortunately for the government, in those two cases, they fought back vociferously and won. So and I'll let you know too is that under federal law, if a federal government agent burdens your religious exercise, substantially burdens it, so like takes your sacrament or anything like that, if you go to court later and win, they owe you for all the lost monies that you incurred as a consequence of that substantial burden. So in the entheogenic church realm, that pretty much means that if they seize sacrament, you could later go back after that individual agent. That's another thing. You're not suing the federal government. You're suing the individual agent for all the lost ceremony donations, on top of probably other things too losses you would incur. But yeah, you're under federal law entitled to both your attorney fees and any money damages incurred as a result of the substantial burden. So I mean, that's like with Soul Quest. Soul Quest in Florida brings in a lot of ceremony donations, right? And if you notice, no government agent has been out there to shut them down, right? They're still serving ayahuasca today, even though they have a pending case against the federal government. And it's probably due because no agent wants to risk going out there and shutting them down and then later being held personally liable for all of their lost donations. I mean, I venture to say that would be a judgment that most individuals couldn't stand.
Well, Greg, I'm impressed. I'm all questioned out.
Yeah.
Maybe you can just give us a spiritual message or a wisdom tidbit to leave on, and then spell Psilomethoxin.com for people to reach out to you.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Psilomethoxin.com is our website. We have tons of information and writings, and we posted all of our past sermons there. I think we've had 3 so far. Absolutely invite everybody to join. And yeah, I mean, as a spiritual message, I just want to encourage people to really look inside themselves for the answers that they seek. That, a lot of us have these ultimate questions about what is the nature of reality? What is the nature of life and death? And what is our main purpose here, right? And those, I'll venture to say, those answers reside inside of you, right? But certain people need catalysts to really dig in there Obviously we believe Psilomethoxin and other sacred entheogens are a great tool to connect people to their inner divinity, and hence those questions, answers to those ultimate questions. And so, yeah, just I encourage everyone to do their research. If they haven't already partaken, do your research and just kind of, figure out if this is the best move to you. And I'll say that I believe a lot of people are called to this. So it's like they just get a hunch one day that, oh, this might be, they might see something that spurs a further inquiry. And I just venture that some people are actually being called to these sacraments, and just trust your intuition. And yeah, that'll guide you.
Good words of wisdom, and from a very inspiring man who will
Thank you.
truly be welcomed amongst the oracles in heaven one day.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I appreciate it. Yeah, it's I'm just very, very passionate about this. And spend a lot of my time studying, thinking, pondering about a lot of these questions we've discussed today. And I just like to share that with the world.
Hey, absolutely. And thank you for the inspiring stand you make in the world. It seems like you're doing good and you're on the right path, as far as my heart can tell. Goes out to yours and you and yours.
I'll say this as a parting note. A lot of this has been kind of transcending the fear frequency, right? Because again, there is the analog act out there, and theoretically, they could make an issue out of it, but it's been a very spiritual journey to wake up every day and say, you know what? I know what I'm doing is right. There's a lot of other people that agree that what I'm doing is right. And, just to push forward on that notion alone, regardless of anything else.
Oh, all my relations.
Yeah.
All right. Well, this is Greg Lake and Hugh T Alkemi signing out of Entheo Radio. You can find our podcast on Patreon for early access and some raw materials. So look for Entheo Radio on Patreon, and then you can also find us on YouTube and everywhere else you can listen to audio. Maybe even Odyssey will continue posting on there because it's a little bit more fun and free form. And again, it's ENTHEO Radio. And this is Hugh T Alkemi and Greg Lake signing out.